وسهلا بكل الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا في بث حي ومباشر عبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning, Michigan. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues.
Good morning and thank you for being with us. This is Khalil Hachem with US Arab Radio. Thank you for being with us and thank you for listening. We have a great show for you today. As you well know, Donald Trump will take office on Monday, this coming Monday, that is, and he promised to start deporting immigrants. He said 20 million. I don't think he's going to be able to do it on the same day, but he's going to start the process. And that's how would that affect our community, the Arab American communities in not just in Michigan, but in the United States as all, and what the community nationwide is doing about it, and what can we do? With us this morning is Shahad Atiya. She is an attorney serving immigrant communities in complex legal matters, including immigration, international family law, and criminal matters. And she is also a professor of crimmigration. Did I say it correctly?
Yes.
Crimmigration at the University of Michigan in Dearborn. Good morning, and thank you for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. What's crimmigration?
Crimmigration is the intersectionality of criminal law and immigration law. This is a new area of law that has emerged because of the way that we've been treating immigrants in this country the last 20 to 30 years.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to add about your background before we get into this subject?
No, thank you so much for having me. Other than
Absolutely.
I am actually an asylum seeker myself, and I've gone through the process that a lot of my clients are very afraid and worried about.
Yeah, wonderful. So January 20th is on Monday, and the president promised that he's going to start deporting immigrants. How does it affect our community, which is an immigrant community?
You know what? The last time he took office, we saw all of his policies directly affecting our community. So this time around, we have the blueprint from the original Trump administration. We have Trump administration 2.0. We see some of the things that were implemented were found and upheld by the Supreme Court to be constitutional, such as the travel ban. We're probably going to see another similar travel ban and other further vetting for people that are waiting for green cards or visa holders.
So who would be immediately affected? Last time I remember when he started deporting people, there were like buses from Michigan, 2 or 3 buses of individuals who were held for a while. Some of them were released later on. Who would be affected on January 20th or when the process starts?
The first people that are going to be affected are the people that either do not have legal status in the United States or have criminal convictions, even if they are minor criminal convictions. You mentioned the state of Michigan, and in the state of Michigan, like many states, we require a driver's license for you to be driving. And so a valid driver's license can only be had if you have a valid Social Security number. So if you are driving without a license in Michigan, that is a criminal offense. And sometimes your local law enforcement pulling you over ends up you going into immigration custody because of that offense. People need to be aware of that. People also need to be aware that if they're outside the United States, they should think about some of the encounters that they will have at the port of entry when they come, like their phones being subjected to searches, that they're going to be questioned for further vetting in secondary inspections, and they need to ask for attorneys during that questioning.
Sure. Even those who are citizens coming from other places, A lot of people misunderstand this, and I would like our listeners to really understand that before entering the country, you don't have full rights. Is that correct?
You have your rights in the country, but at the port of entry, we scrutinize you higher because we can
Okay.
always claim national security, right?
Okay.
So at the port of entry, Border Patrol agents, Customs and Border Patrol agents have more the ability to ask further questioning that officers are not normally able to ask you on the side of the road.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when Donald Trump talks about it, it makes it sound so dramatic. I mean, I wasn't born here, but I'm a naturalized citizen, and I've been for years and years. So should I carry my passport with me? Those who have a green card, should they carry them, carry them with them in case they get stopped?
So green card holders are required by law to carry their green cards on them. People that have mixed status or waiting for a green card and they have a work permit, for example, they're required to carry that on them at all times. I know people get worried about carrying the original because they feel if it gets lost, what do I do? It's my legal identification. That's true, but an officer on the side of the road is not going to accept a copy. So my advice to people has been check that your passport is valid, check that your green card is valid. Just look at it one last time because maybe you thought it was, but it's not. Have your documentation ready. So some people are applying for passports for their kids just to have that extra documentation. As a U.S. citizen, you're not required to carry your identifying documents beyond a state ID. That's a state law. So that officers can identify you, but you're not required to carry your U.S. passport.
Absolutely. Do we have any idea, or is it still too early, what role local law enforcement is going to play in this?
You know what? In the last Trump administration, we saw it, and my clients were calling me because sometimes local law enforcement were the people that were pulling them over. So in the state of Michigan, you can pull somebody over for not having valid insurance, for example. If you're asking them to show identification and you have determined that they may not have legal status in the United States, you can call ICE or CBP as a law enforcement agent. And so that's what we were seeing was that some law enforcement agencies were calling ICE, and then ICE is either verifying the person's identity, that they have legal status and letting them go, or taking them and placing them into removal proceedings. And that's when you saw people were getting detained.
Okay. And that's going to be my second question. If somebody is stopped, what do they need to do?
So the first thing they need to do is cooperate with law enforcement in identifying themselves. They need to either give over their license or any other identification they have. The other thing is, before it gets there, they need to discuss with their family, what is the family plan? What is the family emergency plan? Is there a lawyer that they have right on speed dial that they're going to call? Is there somebody that's there to translate for them, for example, with the officer right on site, somebody that's able to be on speakerphone? Or it's not to alarm people, but just to make them be prepared for what is coming.
Sure, absolutely. And do you recommend that they identify a lawyer, they identify somebody that can reach out to as well?
Absolutely. I even think that they should be talking to lawyers ahead of time just to find out what their options and rights are. The other thing that I've prepared my clients for is to collect the important documents that they need, because if they are detained, who's going to go into their house and get me the valid green card?
Sure.
You know, we need a plan. We need to know who is the person that I can reach out to for that emergency. And they need to put together some money aside in case they do need to end up going through a bond proceeding or hiring an attorney. That's because in immigration sense, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's
in
okay.
the immigration world, you're not constitutionally protected to have an attorney represent you in court. You have to either find a pro bono attorney or hire your own attorney. It's not a constitutionally protected right.
Roughly, what are we talking about money-wise?
Okay, so bond proceedings could be anywhere between $2,500 to $5,000. That's just to get you out on bond. Trials could be anywhere between $2,500 to $50,000. I mean, it depends. Some people have been fighting their immigration cases for 20 to 30 years. I kid you not.
Yeah. Are they still in custody?
Some of them are in custody, some of them are not in custody.
Yeah, yeah. So what's the process? Somebody gets picked up, I mean, they have their information, assuming that they have their information and they have a plan, they have information in order. And what happens next?
Let's say somebody's getting picked up and is getting detained. The
Hmm.
process goes like this. So when you get picked up, the minute you get picked up, you get either in the state of Michigan, you get taken to Marysville, or in Detroit at the Jefferson Station to get interviewed by CBP. CBP is going to do that background research to
What's CBP?
Customs and Border Protection.
Okay.
They are going to find out that background information. Sometimes ICE picks up people because in the state of Michigan, you're always within 100 miles of an international border.
Sure.
So ICE is also patrolling our streets, like other law enforcement agencies, local law enforcement agencies. So it's going to be either ICE, which is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or CBP. They interview you. They ask you your legal status. If they can't verify it, you're going into, let's say you're going the detained route. They're going to determine you have to go to get a judge to determine whether you should be getting out of jail.
Sure.
Within 2 weeks of that detainment, within 2 weeks of you asking for a bond, they're required to schedule you for a bond hearing. So
Okay.
within those 2 weeks, your family has to do all of that work of getting you with the attorney, meeting you in jail, finding out what you qualify for, and then putting the packet together to get it to court.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then you
This-
get a bond hearing, and the
Yeah.
judge determines whether you qualify for a bond.
Okay. Do you think that they're gonna follow this due process even though somebody is not a citizen, or they're gonna haphazardly determine, okay, this person needs to be deported, boom, out?
I will say, in my experience in immigration, in the last 8 years, we've seen that there are standards of due process that are required to be followed. The people that are going to be immediately deported are the people that have previous orders of removal that
Okay.
are just reinstated. So they've already been removed and they somehow re-entered the United States. And so they don't get any due process. We just implement the previous order and we remove them.
Okay. Okay.
The people that are going to have due process are the people that we are required to give due process to.
Sure. Sure.
Whether it's by the Constitution or
Yeah.
the Supreme Court, we have to uphold their due process.
Absolutely.
So, although it is a scary time out there, people still have the opportunity to fight their cases in immigration court.
Yeah. Yeah. And here I see how important it is for people to have their information in order, their papers in order, and then, to really have somebody who they can reach out to, identify a lawyer, and then a point of contact so they can have that plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there anything I haven't asked you that people need to know?
You know what? I think you have covered the basis, and I think the community last time was very vigilant. The community is going to be just as vigilant and active this time. I think they're even more prepared this time around. It's 8 years later. We know exactly what to expect. The community should also be aware that there are services out there, legal services that were established as a result of the first Trump administration, that they should now be seeking the help of to get educated. I'm doing a lot more of this because I need people to know that there are resources out there for them. We shouldn't just live in fear. We should know what our rights are.
Where do we find these resources?
You know what? Local attorneys like myself are doing this work, a lot of this work, because we saw it the first time around. I've seen Access, I've seen Code Legal Aid, I've seen the ACLU do a lot of these training. The last one this week was the National Lawyers Guild did one. And we are doing a lot more of these awareness forums for people.
Sure. It would be great if all of these resources are pulled into like one area where people can tap into, know where to go.
Thank you so much for that feedback. I will take it and have some of my
I mean, we can post it with the story. I can post it in my magazine online, and then in our systems, and then it gets shared by a lot of people. This way, people can really know. Finally, how can people reach you if they need help or have additional questions?
Thank you so much. People can reach me at my website at atiyalaw.com. They can call our office at 248-951-2450. On our website, I've posted the documents list that people can look at to collect for bonds. It's been up there for at least 8 years now. It's atialaw.com/bonds, and you can start collecting those documents without even calling an attorney.
Sure. And Atiya, could you spell it for us, please?
Sure, it's
website?
Atiya Law, ATIYALAW.com.
Okay. And could you repeat your phone number one more time?
248-951-2450.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And definitely we're going to be talking about this, down the road, a few weeks from now, maybe next month, to see how things are going, depending on how this process is going to unfold.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to take a short break. Please stay tuned.
Life for Relief and Development has now been rated as one of the best charities for humanitarian aid. Life's humanitarian projects span the globe, and Life is celebrating its 30th anniversary of providing essential life-saving aid to people and communities in 36 countries, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. Where there is life, there is hope. And when disaster occurs here or around the world, including being one of the first responders to the Turkey-Syria earthquake crisis, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. We are looking to help the earthquake victims, and we take 0% overhead on emergency donations. So please help improve these efforts. Learn more about our involvement to help the helpless and bring hope where it's needed most, and make your tax-deductible donation to Life for Relief and Development now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's 248-424-7493.
Behind the scenes, Michigan's public health team is working to make Michiganders across the state healthier. Bringing healthcare closer to home with mobile clinics, increasing access to healthy food through farmers markets and WIC, doing hearing and vision screenings in schools, helping families navigate healthcare challenges. Learn more about how public health workers protect us all at michigan.gov/public health. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain. The U.S. Arab Radio Network is the largest Arab and Muslim radio network in America, broadcasting throughout the Midwest region Monday through Friday on WNZK AM 690. U.S. Arab Radio features Arabic and English language programming on every topic, from health, food, and culture to government, politics, and legal issues. Listen live to U.S. Arab Radio in Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, and Windsor, Canada on WNZK AM 690. And in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia on WDMV 700 AM. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. So join us every day on the U.S. Arab Radio Network and check out our website at www.arabradio.us.
Welcome back, and thank you for being with us. This is Khalil Hachem with U.S. Arab Radio. We're going to be continue talking about justice from the first segment, and in a different way or a different light, and that is what happened with Donald Trump and President Biden. Donald Trump will be sworn in on Monday as a president. He will be the first president in office who was convicted in a crime. He was a felon, basically. And there were several cases against him. Most of them are dropped. Maybe some are delayed. We're not sure, but most of them will be dropped because they cannot prosecute. It's a norm. I'm told we cannot prosecute a sitting president. On the other hand, President Biden pardoned his son, who was convicted of a crime, and a lot of people feel like, justice is not served here. Why are these people getting special treatment? Are presidents rising above the law? With us this morning is Dr. Amny Shuraydi. She's a assistant professor of criminology and criminal justice at the University of Michigan Dearborn. Good morning, and thank you for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, some people feel like justice is not served here. I mean, why are these people getting special treatment?
So that's a question that takes a bit of a bit to answer, I guess, is what I'm saying here. The special treatment is not necessarily the right word, I guess, or the word I would use in the sense that like in a more colloquial sense, yes, it's special treatment. When we're looking at laws and when we're looking at how this is laid out, it is within the law, is the argument that the Supreme Court is making here, is that the president has special powers and has these special abilities or special circumstances that allow them to get away with these things, essentially, but within legality. So it's not that it's legal, but it's that the punishment and the prosecution is different for people in that position. And the argument here would be, well, any president would get away with it. So it's not special treatment if it's applied to anybody in that position. But this is the first time that we are dealing with something like this and seeing something like this. It's not the first time that we've had a president commit illegal crimes or be pardoned in a way that, because when we talk about Nixon, there's precedent with Nixon, and the precedent that Nixon set and that case set was actually looked at by the Supreme Court in Donald Trump's case. But what we're seeing is differences in how these cases were handled. And then there's the argument of, can presidents be prosecuted under criminal circumstances, even though the Nixon case set up civil differences in how they can be prosecuted?
It seems that, and again, it just took forever to get the Department of Justice report said that Trump would have been convicted in the election case. And why did it take 4 years and they didn't even complete that?
Our justice system is notoriously slow. It can take years to prosecute a case. I think that as a general public, we've become accustomed to seeing these beautifully wrapped up videos of a crime, in 1 hour or less, maybe 2 if there are commercials and you're watching Dateline or 2020. But our justice system is notoriously slow. It can take years and decades between appeals, between documenting the evidence, between delays. Scheduling delays often happen. The COVID pandemic was one thing that caused a lot of issues in terms of delays and changes to our justice system. And so it's not really unheard of that it would take this long, especially with appeals.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So now, is that a different case than the one in Georgia?
I'm not sure which.
The Department of Justice report in regard to January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And is that a different case than the election case that was pending against Donald Trump in Georgia?
Yes. So I believe there are 2 different cases. You have the hush money case and you have the election case.
No, the election cases, there was one on January 6th in Washington, D.C., which the Department of Justice was taking care of. And then there was also another one in Georgia where they were going after Donald Trump because he did implicate the the Secretary of State there asking him on video that he wanted, 11,000 votes and whatever, 1,100 votes,
Yes.
whatever the number is. So that would be a different case, right?
Yes, yes. So if he's being tried in multiple places, each case has their own jurisdiction.
Okay.
But when we're talking about the courts being slow, that's kind of across the board, and they can keep being appealed regardless. So we have these states criminal justice systems, and then you have the federal system. And so
Okay.
depending on where you're being tried, it can vary.
Yeah. And also there was another case against him in regard to the secret documents in Mar-a-Lago in Florida. And I don't know whether that was a federal case or was
I'm not sure, but I know that with the case regarding the election results, there has been an argument made that by Trump's lawyer that he was acting as a president by confirming that the votes were correct. And so basically what we are seeing now is the Supreme Court saying that if a sitting president was acting under the powers of his presidency or her presidency in the future or their presidency, then they cannot be tried for it or cannot be punished for it because it would create issues in terms of their decision making. So when a president has to make a decision very quickly without being able to predict the future, hindsight is 20/20 and we can criticize decisions that somebody makes. But the idea here is that we would need our sitting president to be able to make decisions on the fly without the fear of repercussions. And so that protection is typically afforded when somebody is making what they believe is to be the best decision at that time. And that's why that protection exists. But in this case, we're seeing a different situation because the argument is that these decisions were not ideal for the American people and for democracy.
When then a lot of people feel that there was a Supreme Court decision given the president more, more immunity because these judges were nominated and brought in by President Trump. And some people feel like, and then also what happened with President Trump and President Biden, some people feel like they don't feel the same way about justice in America. The idea of justice being diluted? Are we going to be dealing more and more like I'm the president, I can do whatever I want?
So we are going to see a lot of changes in the upcoming months and years that we can't necessarily predict, but based on the setup of the Supreme Court and the way that the Supreme Court is set up and the decisions that they've been making thus far, we are going to see changes and potential challenges to what we have since known up until this point as justice. Now, America has issues with justice, being not always just. Our criminal justice system is not always a just place. There are a lot of disparities in how people are treated and how people are tried. And the crimes of the powerful, like Donald Trump, and that can be people with political power or people with a lot of money, have always been treated differently than the crimes of the average person. And corporate crimes, white collar crimes are always treated a little bit differently. And so justice, depending on how you define it, is not necessarily something that we completely have in the US already. But what we're seeing now is a more outright version of these differences between groups. And so we are seeing Donald Trump be excused, and which may be emboldening. I will say the justices are saying he is guilty, but that we can't punish him. And that's a bit of a different situation than just saying this person is not guilty. So there is still the shame without the punishment. So he's not necessarily getting away with the crime so much as not facing prosecution or he did face prosecution, but not
I know.
facing the same punishments that a typical person would face.
Average person would face. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we're going to see changes. It may be emboldening to know that he can get away with things without punishment. And that sets a precedent not just for these next 4 years, but for the long-term future of the U.S., unless something happens that overturns this later on and changes the standards.
A different Supreme Court. Yeah. A different Supreme Court. Yeah. Because, what I'm concerned about here is the public trust in justice. As you said, we've always known that the mighty and the powerful are going to get different justice, but this confirms it. This shows us that, we used to believe that nobody's above the law. Well, there are certain people that are above the law, and these guys are above the law.
Yeah, we are seeing a shift in the American public's blind support for the system. I think so often we have had historically mainstream media telling the American public, the general American public, how to think. And when you have media that is all paid for by the same conglomerate groups, funded by the same types of people, or funded by the people in power, it becomes very difficult to translate what they're saying into a true or clear way. And so what we're seeing now is more social media, more behind the scenes media, more underground media that are becoming more commonplace among the American people. And so a good example of this would be the Luigi Mangione case, where you're seeing these class differences, even though he is of an upper class family, but you're seeing these really strong discussions in the public about us versus them, which is the powerful versus the powerless, or the people with less power, who may have to use collective power to get anywhere, versus as individuals. And so you are seeing this shift where maybe people aren't trusting the justice system as much. They may not be trusting the entire way that the system is set up, not just in terms of criminal justice, but across the board in terms of support for families, support for people, punishment for individuals. And I think that case is going to play a really important role in seeing how we see these dynamics shift, and how people are becoming aware of class differences. Because I think prior there was an awareness, but this is really bringing them to the mainstream and to the front of the line of discussions when we talk about differences in treatment.
Yeah, and I see a lot more discussion in that, but unfortunately not in mainstream media. And as you said, that mainstream media is in the orbit of the politicians and the powerful and so forth and so on. And I was seeing that in the war in the Middle East, where most media will basically read press releases from the government instead of, and they're on the ground. It's like, go do your job, and it's really unfortunate. Somebody told me a long time ago when I started in journalism, I would say 30 years ago, the difference between what politicians say and what the truth is a big gulf. And then our job as a media is to bridge that gulf and tell the people what is going on and inform them so they can make a informed decision. And unfortunately, the media is not doing that. And it's really unfortunate, because I see, I notice that public trust in the system, in justice, in the international justice is not there. It's just, being eroded over and over and over. Yeah. Oh, no, who knows what else is going to come.
Yeah. And so I think people are waking up and seeing the changes. And that's something that, when we think about historically what collective power can do and what collective agreement can do, we are going to see potential change in a positive direction if the general public and the general people can at least come together and create these shifts.
Yeah. The person who's going to be leading the Department of Justice, Attorney General, I believe, I forgot her name. Anyway, she said that she will not use that office for political purposes, but I think she was selected because she's the kind of person who will do whatever Donald Trump asks her to do. And I mean, any idea what may happen? It's just that doesn't sound right to me.
I'm not sure.
Miss Bondi, I believe.
I guess we will see what happens in the coming months and the coming year. That we are seeing a very different type of cabinet than we've normally seen in past years. And so the question of checks and balances in the US is going to be very different. It's going to look very different than what historically we have known, or at least been told is protecting us.
Sure.
There's going to be less checks and balances than we're used to. But with that being said, what people say to get into an office can be or can end up different than what they actually do once they're there.
Exactly.
What people's change of hearts look like while they're actually in a position can be surprising sometimes. And so, Donald Trump has been in office before. He chose his people before, and we did see changes of heart. We did see shifts in thinking. We did see changes in what people said they would do versus what they actually did. And we saw that with the Biden presidency as well. And so we really can't predict. So while it may look bleak, there should always be some level of hope, I would think. And that's just, you need something to keep you going.
Yes.
So I think having some hope that things can work out is important to get through these next few years.
Any final thoughts?
I think that we just have to take things day by day. I think this will be really important and interesting to see what comes up. And I think that these next few months, not just with the presidency, but with the House, the Senate, the different types of cases and crimes that are going to be prosecuted, we're going to see really interesting things for the future of criminology and criminal justice, but also of politics, of the country, and of how we handle things. And I think it'll be important to keep an eye out on these things as we move forward.
Dr. Shuraydi, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned.
As the weather gets colder, it's a good idea to layer up with scarves, hats, and mittens. Another layer of protection this season is to get your flu and COVID-19 vaccines. You can get both vaccines at the same time. Talk to your healthcare provider or learn more at michigan.gov/COVID-flu-RSV and layer up for some added peace of mind. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali Al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bonham, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali Al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights.
Michigan's winter forecast is snow, snow, and more snow. And for a little variety, ice. Since that means slippery roads, stay safe by following these driving tips. Don't use cruise control on ice and snow. Use turn signals sooner to give others more time to react. Keep your car's fluids, tires, and wipers well maintained. And most important of all, drive slow on ice and snow. A message from the Michigan Office of Highway Safety Planning.
With more than 30,000 successful in vitro fertilizations, IVF Michigan is now ranked as one of America's best fertility clinics according to Newsweek magazine. IVF Michigan fertility centers are the recognized leaders in high-quality fertility care. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 9 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. A founding member, American board-certified Dr. Nicholas Shama, is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. He has performed over 20,000 successful IVF cases, and it's helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. when it's time to get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at one of America's best fertility clinics. Call IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio toll-free at 855-952-9600. 855-952-9600.
Welcome back. This is Khalil Hachem with US Arab Radio. Thank you for being with us. It is winter, it is cold, and most people are either sniffling with cold, maybe other ailments. With us this morning is Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian. She's the State of Michigan's Chief Medical Officer. Thank you so much for being with us. So we appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So what's going on out there? There's a lot of sniffling. I see masks. I see a lot of stuff out there.
There is a lot of sniffling. I think that's a very true statement. This is cold and flu season, and we're seeing a lot of viral respiratory diseases, just like we expect. We just had the holidays, and we know that people were getting together in indoor settings over the holidays. And whenever people get together indoors, there's transmission of these kinds of diseases. So there is both influenza transmitting right now, as well as COVID, as well as all of the other things that like to transmit at this time of year.
Yeah. I don't see people scared of COVID like they used to. People call me and say, I'm sorry, I can't make it to a meeting. I have COVID. And that's it. They're not as scared as they used to.
And I'm very glad that people aren't as scared. And I think one big reason for that is because we have tools. We've got tools to keep ourselves safe. And COVID is not what it once was, because most of us, the vast majority of us, have some sort of immunity to COVID. So about 98 to 99% of the population has some sort of protection, whether it's from a previous vaccine or a previous infection. And so COVID doesn't necessarily mean the same serious outcomes. But I just want to remind people that the immunity wanes over time. So if you have some protection from a previous infection or previous vaccine, you want to make sure you have the best immunity possible. And that means making sure that you've had the most recent COVID-19 vaccine that came out in the fall. If you haven't had it yet, it's not too late to get it.
Is it becoming like a yearly thing, or do I have to get it more than once a year?
It is becoming a yearly thing. So what happens, just like with the flu vaccine, is that we are able to see which variants are transmitting, what's the best type of vaccine we need to target those variants that are transmitting. And also we know that with these diseases, your immunity remains good for about 4 months after you get the vaccine, and then it declines. And so making sure that you get the COVID and flu vaccines in the fall gives you your best protection over the winter months when these viruses transmit more. We know that viruses like COVID-19 like to transmit in cold and dry conditions. They actually live longer on surfaces when it's cold and dry. So wintertime is when they like to transmit. They also really appreciate all the gatherings we have over the holidays. So making sure you get your COVID and flu vaccines in October, November means that you're going to have really great immunity December, January, February, and even March.
Sure. And how about the flu? How are we faring there? It seems like a lot of people are having the flu.
Flu numbers are up as well. Again, this is something that we expect. We see this every winter. We never know when the peak is going to be. Sometimes the peak is in December. Sometimes it's in January. Sometimes it's a little bit later in February or March. So numbers are up. It's possible that we have hit the peak, but it's also possible that we'll see a second peak, or that numbers will continue to go up. We won't really know for another few weeks. So we're watching those numbers carefully. But the good news is this year is not as bad as last year or the year before in terms of the number of people ending up in the hospital with COVID and flu. And in large part, that's because of the immunity that we have. But again, the best way to boost your immunity and keep yourself protected against the serious complications is by getting your COVID and flu vaccines.
Absolutely. So do we know how effective the vaccine is? Sometimes we have an idea, 60%, 70%.
So, this year with the flu vaccine, it looks like it offers about 35% protection against hospitalization. And so a lot of people would say, 35%, that's nothing. But that is your protection against ending up in the hospital. So we know that these vaccines they can't keep you from getting sick. There are over 200 subtypes of these respiratory viruses that transmit during the winter months. So there are many, many viruses. The vaccines protect against 2 specific viruses, and they may not prevent you from getting any infection at all. But what they will do is hopefully keep you out of the hospital, keep you out of the ICU, and keep you off ventilators. And, I'm an infectious disease doctor. I've spent much of my career working in places like the ICU, seeing people struggling to breathe from things like influenza. And trust me, you don't want to end up in that position.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Why does it fluctuate?
Why does what?
The effectiveness? Like 1 year it's 50%, 1 year is 35%. Why does it fluctuate?
So when the flu vaccine is being created, what we're doing is we're looking at what is circulating in the Southern Hemisphere. So we're looking at what viruses are circulating in places like South America, in Australia. And based on what's happening in the Southern Hemisphere, we try to predict what will be transmitting later on in the Northern Hemisphere. And it's not always an exact match, but we do know that there is a boosting of your immunity. There's very little downside to getting a vaccine. You may feel achy, you may have a low-grade fever afterwards. You can feel a little bit run down. Those are all signs of your immune system being boosted, your immune system working really hard. And people are always asking me, what is the best way to boost my immunity? And I always say it's things like getting enough sleep, getting exercise, eating a healthy diet, and vaccines. Because those vaccines are telling your immune system exactly what to be on the lookout for.
I had my vaccine in September when it first came out. Do I need to take it again for the flu?
So I would talk to your healthcare provider. There are some groups, people who have many comorbidities or who may be immune suppressed, where in some instances a second vaccine could be recommended. But for most people, a single vaccine, single COVID, single flu in the fall will offer you protection to get through cold and flu season. Now, there are other things you can do. I just mentioned a few of them, things like getting enough sleep and exercise and diet, but also making sure that you are not if someone around you is ill, that you're keeping your distance, that you're washing your hands really well, that people are washing their hands before food preparation. So there are all kinds of other things that we sort of take for granted because they're so common sense, but these are all ways that we can keep ourselves safe.
Absolutely. When I know it's voluntary, but when should we wear a mask?
So, the guidance around masking is really, if you feel safer, if you feel like you want to wear a mask, please go ahead. So if you are someone who is, say you're traveling and you're in a busy airport and it makes you feel safer to wear a mask because you have other underlying issues, other underlying health issues, please feel free. The most important time to wear a mask is if you are sick.
Okay.
So our advice is, if you are someone who is ill, we want you to stay at home and avoid other people. But sometimes it's unavoidable that you have to be around your family members, for example. And wearing a mask when you are the one who is coughing and sneezing and runny nose prevents those virus particles from dispersing in the air. And that's a really good way to keep those around you from getting sick if you cannot avoid being around them. We also know that masks do offer protection to the individual wearing them. You have to be a little bit more careful about not contaminating your mask with your hands, for example. I wear a mask when I'm rounding in the hospital. It's something very commonplace that we do in hospitals to protect ourselves when there are so many germs around us. So if you are ill, please wear a mask. And then if you, based on your medical history, your comfort level, want to wear a mask, please go ahead.
Yep. One thing I noticed that we kind of laxed a little bit on washing our hands. We were really good at it during COVID. Now I'm noticing, I was telling the kids, hey, kids, you need to get back into washing your hands a lot more than you did before and longer than you did before.
Yeah. So hand washing is really one of the most important things you can do. And not just because of these respiratory viruses that I've been talking about. I've been mentioning things like COVID and flu. We also have respiratory viruses like RSV transmitting right now, but also we have some stomach viruses transmitting now. So we're seeing higher cases of things like norovirus.
Okay.
Norovirus is very unpleasant. It causes vomiting and diarrhea. And one of the most important things you can do if you want to protect yourself against norovirus is washing your hands before you eat, before any food preparation, and of course, after you use a restroom. And we worry about contamination of surfaces. So if you are touching surfaces out in public, wash your hands before you come home and touch your face, for example.
When to see a doctor, whether it is a flu or COVID?
So, I think every individual, it sort of depends on their own comfort level. For respiratory viruses, if you are having a hard time controlling your symptoms at home, if you are having difficulty breathing, if you're gasping for air, of course, you would want to see a healthcare provider then. We also know that people like to get a test and find out what they have. Is it COVID? Is it flu? The good news is there are now tests for both COVID and flu that you can buy over the counter. So you can actually test yourself at home, but going to a doctor to get a test is another option because we have specific antiviral therapies for COVID and flu. So if it's one of those two things, you may qualify for an antiviral therapy. Otherwise, for most of these other viruses that are circulating, it's just managing your symptoms, taking something for the body aches, taking something for your sore throat, making sure that you're very well hydrated. Now, if we're talking about a GI illness or, a stomach bug, if you're unable to keep down liquids and you're worried that you're getting dehydrated, if you're feeling lightheaded or dizzy, those are definite signs that you should see a healthcare provider.
How effective the home tests?
Well, we have a lot of experience using these home tests during COVID because people were keeping COVID tests at home and we were encouraging testing. Testing is really only as good as the sample you obtain. So you want to make sure you're really reading the directions and following those directions exactly. We also know that some of the antigen tests, they may not pick up on early cases. So if you get a negative test, you may want to test again the following day. And the other really important reminder is if you test negative for COVID-19 or the flu, we still want you to stay at home. We still want you to wear a mask because there are so many other viruses transmitting that we don't want you to share. So sharing is good, except for when it comes to viruses.
Yeah, keep your virus to yourself. How long would you stay home, either flu or COVID?
So the guidance for COVID is a little bit different. We recommend a little bit longer duration of staying at home for COVID. But in general, or if you don't know what you have, you want to stay home until you are at least without a fever or with improving symptoms for at least 24 to 48 hours. And even then, you may want to wear a mask around other people, especially, for example, if you have a new baby in the family or a pregnant relative or someone with diabetes and heart disease. Wearing a mask around them for their protection is, I think, an act of love.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything I haven't asked you that people need to know?
I talked a lot about COVID and flu, but I do want to remind people that there is another vaccine that is available for a virus called RSV, or respiratory syncytial virus. And the vaccine that we have is available either for pregnant individuals or those over the age of 60 with other health issues. So if you fall into either of those categories, please see your healthcare provider to see if you can get the vaccine for RSV. It's another virus that can cause really debilitating illness in either the very young or the elderly. So we've got more tools than we've ever had before. We've got tools against 3 of the big viruses, of the big respiratory viruses, COVID, flu, and RSV. So please talk to your healthcare provider. Protect yourself. We want you to stay out of the hospital so that you can be out and enjoying this beautiful January winter weather.
Cold weather, blistering cold. Dr. Bagdasarian, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate your taking the time.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
We're going to take a short break. Please stay tuned.
Hey, Michigan, let's think beyond the sink and learn where the water your family drinks every day comes from. Private wells and public water supplies allow homes across Michigan to draw water from different sources, like lakes, rivers, and groundwater. Tap into the facts about your home's water source and learn about your home's water quality to protect your family's health. Visit michigan.gov/care for MI drinking water. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
Are you going to start a restaurant or a grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Naji Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Naji Abood, 734-744-9796.
Welcome back and thank you for being with us. This is Khalil Hachem with US Arab Radio. I would like to thank our guests, Dr. Shuraydi, Dr. Atiya, and Dr. Bagdasarian for being with us today. And I would like to expand a little bit on what Dr. Shuraydi said, and which is we hope that our politicians will have a change of heart, and then as they come in this coming year, they'll do things the right way so we can continue to have some confidence in our justice system. And I understand that over the years, the rich and famous has a little bit more easier way around because they can buy it. But in general, I like to continue to think that nobody in America is above the law. So hopefully we can, things can work better. I would like to thank everyone for listening and thank our team for the production, Mike included. And also want to remind you that 2025 is expected to be a really good year for real estate. And, we hope that the new administration will inject enough confidence into the market and will help us reduce interest rates a little bit more. Right now, it's between 6 and 7, and we like it to see, less than 6, pretty close to 5, even less than 5 is even better. That will allow more buyers into the market and will allow a much better, opportunity for people to get loans and to keep the economy moving forward. Hopefully they'll do enough to deal with inflation and give us more confidence. If you have any questions, let me know in regard to real estate, whether you're buying and selling commercial or residential. 313-819-0101. We do have one office for retail space for rent in Dearborn on Telegraph Road, near Ford Road, a great location, great price, 2,600 square feet. And in the back of it, there is a warehouse, also about 2,000 square feet. So it's ideal for a furniture store, for any retail that needs a front store and also needs also needs a warehouse. It's a good price. Give me a call, 313-819-0101. Again, we're expecting a really, really good year. And I hope that, we can provide you the help you need. You have any questions in regard to your property or property you want to acquire or any other commercial questions or residential, please give me a call, 313-819-0101. Thank you so much. I wish you a wonderful and safe weekend. Bye now.